Speaker, never has a relationship between the health of a nation and the wealth of a nation been laid quite so bare as these past 6 months. We were promised world beating by this Prime Minister and his Health Secretary, and we got it. Not only has the UK seen the worst death rate per 100,000, but it's also seen the worst economic impact of G20 nations. In response to calls from Labour and the TUC, the government wisely introduced the furlough scheme, and the initial financial support from the government was a lifeline to many of my constituents. 16,000 people in Warwick and Leamington were furloughed. Business grants and loans kept our local economy going, and the District Council was superb in how they did that. But why then, as we head into a second wave, is the government hell-bent on pulling the plug on that support? On the 11th of March, the Chancellor promised to do whatever it takes, but the job support scheme incentivises keeping one employee on instead of two. People working for businesses that are closed under local lockdowns will receive no more than 2/3 of their salaries, even on a minimum wage. Can you imagine? The minimum wage is no longer a minimum. The Winter Economy Plan offers no additional support for those businesses who are required to close. There is no support for those viable businesses severely hampered by the ongoing situation. There is still no answer to the calls of the 3 million taxpayers who have been largely excluded from financial support since the beginning of this crisis, and the offer to self-employed people of 20% of average monthly profits is miserly. Madam Deputy Speaker, you only have to look at the chart and data published by the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, an independent international body, that shows how the UK was the hardest hit of any major economy from April to June. Growth is slowing, and the economy is still 9% smaller than before the pandemic struck. Our unemployment rate has hit the highest level in over 3 years. Our young people have been hardest hit, but across our communities we know there are many more job losses to come. The number of claimants in my constituency is already up 135% since the start of this pandemic. Whole sectors have been flattened. Automotive manufacturing, which is so important to my constituency and many others, was brought to a standstill. It has had its worst September sales this century, and this is resulting in the UK industry facing massive financial pressure. But across the economy, from our assembly workers to our energy engineers, our brewers to our baristas, our dancers to our designers, all too many fear losing their jobs. But it didn't need to be this way. If we look at those countries who have had the strongest economies now, it is those countries that took clear early action to suppress and eradicate the virus. China, Taiwan, and other Asia-Pacific economies are on course to grow in 2020. They took early action to suppress COVID-19 to extremely low levels and put in place highly performing track and trace systems. The only consistency from this government was its inconsistency. Barbers could work, but beauticians couldn't. You could spend 4 hours alongside 300 people on an aeroplane, but not with 50 people on a coach or bus. The government had the whole summer to produce a plan for schools, a plan for universities, a plan for care homes, and most importantly, to fix, test and trace. It instead spent its time telling us to eat out, to help out, and it blew its budget. We could have eradicated this virus with a proper strategy, but the government dithered and delayed. It ignored the approaches from PPE manufacturers in my constituency. Businesses like Steger Clear Plastics in Coventry, Techman more locally to me. These were businesses that could have helped us through, but they were ignored. The Labour Party has called for the government to follow the science and immediately implement a circuit breaker to regain control over the virus and implement a proper strategy to protect public health and therefore the economy. I just hope it listens.